putting a price on compassion, a Buddhist-informed view of paid maternal surrogacy. So maternal surrogacy has existed for much of human history. In ancient China, it was common for wealthy men to, quote, borrow a woman's belly to produce offspring. But still, surrogacy remains controversial. Nuja Gassus, the former chairperson of the UNESCO International Bioethics Committee, has called it, quote, one of the most violent and unacceptable attacks on human dignity. But for many would-be parents, it is the best, if not the only option. So I'm examining ethical questions surrounding the issue of paid surrogacy. So, does money equal exploitation? There's a common assumption within this conversation that commercializing surrogacy increases the risk of exploitation. But I wanted to consider the inverse as well. If a surrogate is unpaid, is the arrangement less likely to be exploitative? And I didn't think that that made sense. So, the Canadian legal context. The Assisted Human Reproduction Act from 2004 means that it is a criminal offense to advertise, pay for, or arrange to pay for a surrogate for her services. So it must be altruistic. Canadian lawmakers aimed to ground assisted reproduction in the ethical principles of beneficence, social justice, consent, and altruism. However, in practice, these ideals have not been fulfilled. The result is an assisted reproduction landscape that has been called misshapen and morally incoherent. So bringing in a Buddhist perspective by Ellen Zhang, she frames it in a positive way. Reproductive technology can be seen as skillful means. She believes surrogacy can be seen as an expression of compassion and loving kindness, as long as it is embodying the principle of ahimsa, or non-harm. She compares surrogacy to the Bodhisattva Guanyin, who appears as a female in the Chinese tradition, as an embodiment of the compassionate surrogate ideal as the bestower of children. Zhang's concerns include the fact that commercialization may lead to commodification, and Buddhism opposes the commodification of both the body and of life. She believes that the true choice of the surrogate is essential. So if poverty means that surrogacy is the only option, she questions whether or not that counts as it really being a choice. To Zhang, the compassionate intention of the surrogate is central in the ethical framework. Bringing in another Buddhist perspective, Suraj Hongadaram, he echoes Zhang's emphasis on compassionate intention, but asks, does the presence of compassion imply a surrogate is acting out of pure altruism? And does that mean that they must therefore receive no payment? He says no. He believes this assumption leads to a lack of professionalization of surrogacy, which results in an absence of legal protection and inadequate compensation, which means that the surrogate's compassion may be exploited. He points out that all labor involves renting out the body to some extent. Manual labor might involve renting out the whole body. Professional labor may involve renting out the brain, and surrogacy may involve renting out the womb. He believes surrogates should receive equal respect for their work and suggests that we abandon the question of commercialization altogether in order to honor the Buddhist values of non-harm and compassion. He believes that surrogates must be fairly compensated and legally protected. So I looked at the situation of paid surrogacy in Thailand because for a while it was a very popular international surrogacy destination. and also because it is a majority Theravada Buddhist country, so I thought it could offer some insight. So in Thailand, karmic merit and monetary compensation are not mutually exclusive. Surrogacy is seen as a selfless, meritorious act, which may help amass good karma, and may also fulfill bun kum, which are Thai filial duties, and that would be done financially through the payment. So this idea is that money doesn't reduce merit, which Whitaker believes comes from the fact that in Thailand people are culturally comfortable with financial exchange of a domestic nature, for example, bride prices, and also religious, in the case of Buddhist temple donations. So the Thai word for surrogacy is umbun, which means carrying the merit. Means to carry is the word used to refer to carrying children, and bun means merit or good karma. So still there was a shift. Complexities arose in this industry. There was some human trafficking. There were some really egregious cases of abandonment of babies by foreign parents. And after the coup in 2014, the laws changed in 2015, restricting paid international surrogacy. Well, restricting all international surrogacy. So, like Thailand before it, Canada is now an international surrogacy hub, which I found very surprising, and I thought would probably surprise other Canadians as well. Public health care and a ban on paying surrogates makes it affordable. So the situation is ethically complex. A Canadian surrogate could be carrying a baby for free, while our public health care covers medical costs. Meanwhile, the reproductive materials could have been purchased with someone else profiting overseas. So it's really complicated. And risks go beyond commercialization, of course. So in Canada, people have generally decided that surrogates should not have to suffer financially for undertaking this labor, but that compensation often ends up taking on the form of gifts or reimbursement of pregnancy expenses, because actually paying surrogates is illegal. So this is obviously uncontrolled and may be potentially very unfair. And there are unequal power dynamics, of course, between the surrogate and the intended parent or parents. So the interesting thing is that research suggests that exploitation is a risk regardless of payment. It doesn't actually have a whole lot of impact on other exploitative issues surrounding surrogacy. So does surrogacy selflessness go too far? Surrogates are often undersupported. Their lives may be derailed in the process. It might impact their children or their families or communities, which would violate the principle of non-harm. So we must move beyond the assumption that altruism must always be the central motivation. And more must be done to support and empower surrogates. So these are perspectives of Miner, who's a sociologist, bioethicist, and clinical ethicist, Fulfer, who's a philosophy and women's studies professor, and Pamela White, who's a medical law and ethics researcher. So putting a price on compassion. We undervalue compassion. This is exemplified by the fact that so many caring professions are so underpaid, including nurses, early childhood educators, personal support workers, and nannies. So in a capitalist society, I'd say that if we value compassion, we must pay people fairly for it and get rid of the assumption that the presence of compassion means labor is altruistic, which means it is unpaid or underpaid. So just completely get rid of that equation. So a few final thoughts. Buddhism doesn't offer a direct answer to the issue of paid surrogacy, but it can provide ethical insights, especially around the principles of compassion, intention, and non-harm. Hongledaram says that surrogacy relies on the compassion of the surrogate, but it is often unreciprocated. So his recommendation is that ethical care must be mutual. The care must extend from the parents, the lawmakers, medical establishment, and the surrogate. And that compassion must flow in all directions. If compassion is truly reciprocal, a more ethical solution may emerge. So where I've kind of personally landed on it all is that we've decided labor should be paid. So that means that all labor should be paid. If someone is embodying compassion in their work, that doesn't make their work any less valuable. So I think that we should pay surrogates in Canada. I'm still undecided about the international element, but I think it should be surrogacy should be regulated, well paid, and subject to robust labor protections. But most importantly, drawing from Hongledaram, I think all participants must embody the principle of compassion throughout the entire process.